Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Nur Alizati binti Amir. I am the one of my group who's going to present about the inflation in Malaysia, about the causes, impact and government measure to control it. And this is my team members of this project. First, we're going to talk about introduction. So, for the introduction, inflation is the rise in the prices of goods and service over time, reducing the value of money and affecting purchasing power. In Malaysia, inflation is influenced by both local and global factors, such as oil prices, currency changes and supply chain issues. Recent inflation has been driven by rising food and food costs, as well as the post-pandemic recovery. Its impact everyday life, especially for low and middle income groups, and affects key sectors like food, housing, and transport. The government address inflation through policies by Bank Negara Malaysia, including interest rate changes and subsidies. Understanding inflation is important for creating effective strategies to support economic stability and improve living standards. We're going to talk about the research objective. The main goal of this research is to identify the causes, effects, and the government actions taken to address inflation in Malaysia. It's look at the both local and global factors like food prices and the currency rates, examines how the inflation affects household and key sectors, and evaluates the effectiveness of current policies. This study aims to provide insight for better future strategies. Methodology of this project. This study uses a qualitative approach to understand the causes, effects, and the government responses to inflation in Malaysia. Data was collected from government reports, from academic journals and news articles, then analyzed it using thematic analysis to identify key trends and impacts on different groups and sectors. And now we're going to talk about the literature reviews. First of literature review is overview of inflation in Malaysia. Inflation is not a new issue in Malaysia. The country has faced high inflation, especially during 1973 until 1974 and the early 1980 series. These periods were mainly caused by global oil prices hikes and shortage of basic supplies like food and raw materials. As a result, price increased rapidly and Malaysia recorded inflation rates of over 10%. During the 1997 until 1998 Asian financial crisis, Malaysia managed to control inflation better than countries like Indonesia, which experienced inflation over 60%. By 2000, Malaysia's inflation rate returned to below 3%, showing signs of recovery. This shows that Malaysia is sensitive to global factors like prices, but with the right policies, inflation can be managed effectively. The second literature review of this in this project is the causes of living and wage stagnation. The cost of living in Malaysia is increasing, especially for basic needs like food, rent, and transportation. Wages are not rising at the same pace, creating a gap between income and daily expenses. When wages can keep up, people lose purchasing power and may have to cut spending or go into debt. The low-income group, especially for the B40, is the most affected since most of their income goes to essentially goods. Even if the national inflation rate seems low, the real burden on the people is still heavy. Over time, this situation weakens household financial stability and reduce consumer spending, which can affect economic growth. The government might need to provide more subsidies or cash aids, which puts extra pressure on the national's budget. The third of literature review is exchanges rate volatility and import prices. The unstable value of the Malaysian ringgit has a strong impact on inflation. When the ringgit weakens, the cost of importing goods like food, medicine, and raw material become more expensive. Since Malaysia depends a lot on imports, the higher cost is passes down to consumer in the form of higher prices. Local production is also affected because many local goods rely on the imported components. Businesses might raise prices early as a precaution because of currency uncertainty. Even before actual costs increase, this leads to unstable or speculative inflation that's hard to control. A stable exchange rate is very important to reduce this effect and helps keep inflation in check. So, what the causes inflation in Malaysia? For this project, we found three causes inflation in Malaysia. First, demand pull inflation, which occurs when demand exceeds supply. Demand pull inflation happens when the demand for goods and services is greater than the economic ability to produce them. This often occurs during economic growth or when the consumers have more income to spend. In Malaysia, supply chain issues and labor shortage, especially in agriculture, have caused a supply-demand imbalance leading to price hikes. And the second causes inflation in Malaysia is cost-push inflation, which happens when production costs rise. Cost-push inflation arises when the cost of producing goods and services increases. This includes higher costs for raw material, food, wages, and the taxes. Businesses then raise their prices to cover the increased expenses, which leads to inflation. In Malaysia, rising energy prices and wage adjustments have contributed to these issues. And the third one is currency depreciation, which increases the cost of imports. When the value of the Malaysian ringgit falls against major currencies like the US dollars, the cost of the imported good becomes more expensive. Malaysia relies on imports of essentials such as food, fuel, and raw material. As the ringgit weakens, prices for the goods increase, which contributes to overall inflation. Currency depreciation also affects local businesses and may discourage foreign investment. And do you know the impact inflation in Malaysia? So if you want to know impacts inflation in Malaysia, we found the three impact inflation in Malaysia. The first one is impact on cost of living. Inflation raised the cost of essential food, fuel, utilities, transport. B14 and M40 group struggle more to maintain their standard of living. Consumer Prices Index (CPI) has been rising constantly, which growth is lower than inflation. Using real income, and the second one is the impact on business. Inflation increased material, labor, and borrowing costs. Business face difficulty in pricing and staying competitive. Affects production, processes, and profits margins. Requires strategic cost management and adaptability. And the third one is social and economic inequality. Whether individual can protect wealth through investment, low-income households struggle with basic necessities. Inflation widens the income and wealth gap, lead to social unrest and distrust in institutions. Requires government intervention, subsidies, support programs, and price control. And do you know about the government measure to control inflation? So, we're gonna talk about the government measure to control inflation. The first one is CPI data to monitor inflation. CPI is designed to measure price changes faced by urban consumers. It's an average, tough, and doesn't reflect any particular consumer experience. The CPI measures the cost of purchasing and constants, representative basket of goods and service. And the second one is the shopping substitution bias. If consumer price indicates are to be correct, they should measure the prices of the goods and that household obtain, and on that basis, measure the prices changes is household purchases. When the household modify their purchasing patterns, the average price of their purchases may change without anything happening in the store. And the third one is fixes the prices index. Index calculation method is the first point of attention is how the price and quantity of goods and service are related. For example, assuming there is no connection between changes in the price and in quantity. The economic approach presumes that connections exist between price and quantity, thus transferring the task of inflation measurement to the field of economics. So, last but not least, now we on the conclusion and suggestion. And the conclusion on this project is inflation in Malaysia is multifaceted economic issue driven by both demand pull and cost push factors such as a rising production cost, fluctuations in global commodity prices, and increasing consumer demand. Therefore, the government has implemented several measures to control inflation, including providing subsidies on essential goods and implementing price control mechanisms. This measure helped to reduce inflationary pressure, along with a structural reform such as increasing food production. And for the suggestion in this project, as a suggestion, the government should invest in financial literacy programs to help citizens manage their finances more effectively during periods of inflation. In addition, continuous monitoring and timely policy adjustment are essential to ensure price stability and protect the welfare of the pupil. And that's all from me. Thank you for my team members of this project, and thank you for Dr. Faizi bin Adnan for teaching us this subject.